Welcome to Make My Vision Real, a local resource for starting and growing your small business. The show's founder and host is Susan Swartzwelder, a small business specialist who helps people start and grow the business of their dreams. Today's show is sponsored by Spear Consulting Services, helping small businesses thrive through social media, websites, and creative marketing. Learn more at spearconsultingservices.com. Now get ready to make your vision real. Here's Susan Swartzwelder.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Make My Vision Real. This is the weekly show that focuses on helping people launch and grow small business. Today's topic is the legal steps to launch. I have a guest here today. Her name is Pamela Kurt of Kurt Law Office in Wickliffe, Ohio. Pam is an attorney and an owner of her own law office since 2008, and she specializes in small business law and family law. Pam graduated from Cleveland Marshall College of Law in 2003 with a master's in public administration. And after graduation, she worked for the city of Cleveland before opening her own law office. Pam, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what I'd like to do today is, Pam, you're not only an attorney who works in the small business arena, but you are also an entrepreneur. And so I thought that having you on the show was kind of a unique situation, as many, well, maybe not so unique, but a lot of the guests that we do have on the show that specialize in helping people launch small businesses are also small business owners themselves. So I think that this brings a great sort of dimension to the show. And so what I think I'd like to do first is let's talk a little bit about, with you owning your own business as an entrepreneur, and then we can get into the legal aspects of, you know, how do you go about it in the legal world and starting up a business. So let's talk a little bit about your career as an attorney. Tell me how you got started. Did you do anything before that? Tell me a little bit about the pre-law world.
Well, thanks again for having me here today. Pre-law world, I actually did sales and marketing. I was not the traditional student, and I think that actually brings a special element to the services that I give in my law firm. I went through law school. I've always worked in retail, sales, and I did that as a single mom. So when people come to my office and want to launch a small business, I also believe in them making their vision real, because I think it's something that you truly can achieve in your passion. So I think that's one of the things that makes it different in our law office. And one of the reasons I chose the path to be an attorney was ultimately so that I could make a difference. And I know a lot of people say that, and I know it sounds very idealistic. But the reality is that I thought I could make a huge impact when I worked for the city of Cleveland, and there's a lot of people in the city of Cleveland.
Right.
So as I started to weigh my options and realize that I enjoy that one-on-one, and as you said, creating the business, that individual concept, that individual vision for the person, it allows me to work one-on-one with that person from the beginning to get them off that platform and make sure they're doing it properly and make an impact, at least individually. So that was a huge part of the reason I left the city of Cleveland and decided to open my own law firm. And as I started to go out on my own, I had all of the exact same fears as anybody else when you open a business. You know, you worry about the money, you worry about how do you pay rent. If you get fortunate enough to be busy enough, how do you pay the people to help you?
And when do you hire somebody to, are you busy enough to hire? Is this just a fluke?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. That's a big stumbling block.
So I think that with my law firm, because we've grown so much since 2008, that we are, that's why I was, again, so grateful to be a part of this conversation, is because I've experienced, just as you mentioned, how do you get from the fear of starting your own business to actually starting to run it successfully?
Right. And so how many attorneys do you have in your office?
Right now we have 5 attorneys.
Wow.
I have 1 law clerk who will be hopefully sitting and passing the bar in February. So another attorney will be coming. And we have 3 paralegals. And we usually have a few interns to help out as well.
So the law clerk, did she start at your office and grow with you, or how does that work? I mean, so are you mentoring her along the way, kind of? And
I am mentoring her. I was fortunate to actually recently just meet her at the beginning of the summer because she has a very interesting story. Her name is Shauna. I'll give her a little plug there because she really is a great right-hand person.
Excellent.
She is from Northeast Ohio area. And when her father's a local attorney, when she decided to go to law school, she actually went abroad and studied in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
So when she returned here back in Northeast Ohio to continue to pass the bar and hopefully work in the legal field, the state of Ohio has a few stipulations that, I guess, a few different technicalities, let's say, that she needs to still continue to fulfill before she could sit for the bar. So she went to New York and actually got a master's in law as well.
Oh, wow.
So she has fulfilled all her academic requirements. Exactly. And many hoops.
Wow.
So I'm really going to be excited when she's able to sit and pass the bar.
So even though she's working for you, there's still a lot of barriers to entry for her to become an attorney, even within a law office. So kind of like what we refer to as an entrepreneur, if you will, because she'll be building her book of business.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And right now she's probably a great case study, if you will, because as we do with some of the client intakes, she's handling that. She's able to, as you said, kind of build her business, but to make some of those client connections as she's getting ready to study.
Great. And okay, so you have 5 attorneys, you said, and some law clerks and paralegals?
Yes.
How many paralegals do you have?
3.
Wow. So you are growing. And so have you outgrown your space yet?
Not yet.
Getting close, sounds
Getting close. Every office is full. We have 2 conference rooms and then obviously file room, bathrooms, all of that kind of regular stuff. But we're getting close.
And so how quickly did you grow? Did you start out as a solopreneur with, hanging your shingle out on the doorstep and, and how did you get those first few business clients to walk through your door?
I want to take the credit, but I really, one of the other things that I think separate me from other law firms, I personally believe if you do the right thing, that opportunity and God provides everything I need. I did hang the shingle and I had a little room that's probably not much bigger than the room we're sitting in now.
Which is small.
Which is quite small. And I had someone that would come and help me maybe 10 hours a week. I was there late doing my own letters, returning phone calls. And it was interesting because things just started to fall in place. And people would approach me for if they could potentially rent space from me. And eventually it became to the point where I have such a heavy caseload that I'm able to also give cases to people.
So these were other attorneys that were coming to you.
And they're attorneys and people that I've met in law school that have now come back into my life and are in my law space. And I mean, it's just such a great feeling because every space, when I initially moved from the little space upstairs in the building I'm in to pretty much the left side of the building on the first floor, I wanted the whole side. And we've now filled the whole side.
Wow, that's terrific. Awesome. What a great success story. I mean, 2008, that was only 5 years ago.
I know. I'm really excited. Who knows in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I know. You could be twice as big.
Yeah.
Wow.
That would be exciting.
Okay. So, so having started out just 5 years ago and growing to, 5 attorneys and law clerks and secretaries and all of that, what was your biggest fear as you started to grow? There's all of that around, do I have enough space? How do I pay the rent and all of that? So what was your biggest fear as you started to grow your business?
I think personally, my biggest fear was the finances. And I think and time. And I think that's pretty common amongst all business owners because you want to stay busy.
Right.
When people ask you how things are going, everybody says busy, and then you almost want to make sure that it's good. It's a good busy. You also make sure you keep that going. But as you grow, the hard thing for me to understand is that as I grow, there's going to be additional costs. Mm-hmm. But as you grow, there's also additional money.
Right.
And so, and I know eventually down the road, you're going to have an accountant on as well.
Yes, he's going to be on next week.
Okay. So I think that that's another resource that you definitely need to consider because as you grow, your legal needs change, your accounting needs change. And if your true vision is to continue to grow, just keep doing that. Because I believe if you do the right thing, and you're doing and following your passion, it'll come. It's pretty scary, though.
It is. And so that is the leap of faith that everyone talks about, and no one really can understand what it feels like to be grasping for that faith and finding the handles.
Right.
You know, it's like until you can, and I spend a lot of hours, everybody has, who's owned their own business, up at 2:30 in the morning, pacing the floor going, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Hello, what did I, you know, and I think everybody goes through that.
Right.
And if you don't go through that, I'm wondering why you wouldn't be going through that, because I think that, you know, our natural tendency is to stay in the safe zone.
Right.
Right. And so, but you really don't grow as a person or grow as a business person until you have stepped outside of that little safe zone.
Right.
And feel completely vulnerable and believe and grab that faith that, yes, it is definitely going to come. I just have to stay focused on what I'm doing and not go off down rabbit holes in other areas.
Right.
My coach that I use, and she'll be on the show later this year, had to remind me of that today again. You know, why are you going down this? This is not within. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And I should not even be considering this other thing. And it's so. I think everybody needs a little bit of that, but remember what the bigger vision was. And
exactly.
So even with being in business for 5 years, okay, you're growing, and you know you've got that steadfast faith. You know it works, right? Because you've got a 5-year track record.
Yes.
Woo! When was your anniversary?
Actually, it would be this upcoming December.
Oh, awesome. So it's coming up. And of course, that's going to be a huge celebration.
Yes.
Right? So now you have a track record.
Right.
Okay. And so do you still feel that little tingle in the stomach?
Absolutely. And being that I am an attorney, when you mentioned taking risk, of course, I would not advise you to take, I guess, crazy risks. But I think that's why you need to consult with the professionals and so on. It doesn't mean you go and sell everything in your house and try to open something up. There is a level of balance. And I think sometimes we need assistance with keeping that balance.
Right. And somebody to pull back the reins a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right? Because when you are living it, you have no perspective except for what's in your head.
Exactly.
Even if you have the best business plan in the world, it still lives in your head. And unless you can have somebody give you that objective, let's step outside a minute here and take a look at things and see where we are, and let's give you some fresh perspective, that is so needed with everybody.
Absolutely.
Anybody who is successful will tell you that they have that person or persons who do it for you, who sort of mentor you in that arena. So what are your big plans for the next 5 years? Do you have long-term 5-year plans? Long-term, that's 5 years now is long-term to me. I don't know what long-term is to most people, but, you know, after the meltdown of 2008 and 9, you know, 3 years is long-term.
Right.
So,
well, in 2008, it's kind of interesting. And I think subconsciously, I put this out there, so that's why it came through. But in 2008, when I decided to go out on my own, I said in 5 years, I want 5 lawyers to work for me.
Wow.
And interestingly, there's 5 lawyers that are now in my office.
Yes.
The next 5 years, I know that I do want to eventually own my own building. And I have, we market, I know you'd mentioned some of the areas of law I specialize in. We try to market as a general practice law office so that when we bring a client in, whatever their need is, we can help them.
Right.
However, as you know, even though we try in many disciplines and areas of our lives, we can't be a master in any area.
Right.
So I do have one attorney in my office that handles bankruptcy. Like you had mentioned for me, is that I do work with the small businesses If there's an overflow, I have other attorneys in the office that can help as well. We handle criminal law. There's federal cases, any kind of family law issues, any kind of foreclosure, landlord-tenant. So we want to be a place that when somebody makes that connection with us, we're able to handle all their legal needs.
Right.
So I want to grow that base. And in the next 5 years, there's a certain level I want to grow in each area. And then in 10 years, because eventually I want to be able to, I'll probably never retire, but I eventually want to be able to
scale back.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And just be a business owner as opposed to a practicing business owner.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be wonderful.
Yes.
If I learn how to do that.
Well, and again, I think we go back to the coaching, I think through every phase of business life as an entrepreneur, you're always dreaming about this is great, but you're always living a little bit in the future.
I think you have to.
You
have to.
It's, that's the manifestation of it all, right? Is if you see yourself doing it, if you act as though you are that, and so then you become that. It's not like you wake up one morning and you go, oh, I am that.
Right.
It's
exactly.
like, it's this progression of manifestation of, I'm expanding this, and it's always about expansion and learning more and being more and doing more. And as things shift and change, different support levels come into your life at different times for those reasons.
Absolutely.
And so, but it's an exciting thing to have a business. Number one, make it 5 years, because of course, the SBA, they'll tell you, 5 years is like, if you make it past 5 years, chances are really good you're going to make it to 8.
Right.
And then if you make it past 8, you're probably there. Right. And so then it's yours to give up at that point.
Oh, I like beating statistics and odds, though.
Oh, well, we're women, so that's normal for us, right?
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, so that's always a fun thing to do. Okay, so I'm getting the cue music that we need to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the process of starting your business on the legal end of things. So stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. This is Susan Swartzwelder with Make My Vision Real. We are here with Pamela Kurt from Kurt Law Office. She is our guest today, and we are talking about the legal side of business startups. And so this segment of the show, we're going to talk about the actual, what do I do when I want to start a business? I am a solopreneur, or maybe I have a partner or two, or maybe I'm in it with my family, and, how do I get the legal end of it going? And so we're going to spend this whole segment of the show talking about that from a legal standpoint. And so Pam specializes in business law, so what's one of the reasons why she's our guest today. So let's start out, Pam, by starting with the first simple question. When it comes to starting a business, what's the first thing that someone needs to think about from a legal standpoint?
I think the first thing someone needs to think about is never to sign anything until you completely understand it. I think that's probably good advice in any situation, but especially in a business situation.
So when you mean anything, like anything, like a lease?
Even a lease agreement.
Loan or anything?
A loan, lease agreement. And the reason a lot of people will go and sign a lease agreement and they haven't formalized their business. Well, does that mean that you're personally liable for the lease if the business fails? Or is the lease agreement solely between you or you and your partners? Is that a personal liability? Is there any clauses in the lease to allow you to get out if the business fails? And if you have it on a personal liability, again, I'm not the accountant, but at the end of the year, when they give you a 1099 that you've paid all this rent, how is that going to be issued? Who is that going to be issued to, and how is that going to be applied even for tax purposes?
Oh, I got it. Okay, so even though the accounting end of it is different, it's still the legal end of it and accounting sort of go hand in hand together.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if I'm starting a business, how do I know how to set it up? I mean, what's the first thing that we should do? Let's go from step one. I know what I'm going to do. So walk me through that. What do I do? I call an attorney. Is that the first person I should talk to?
Of course, I would say that. And the reason I say that, though, I think that whether you're going to go into a business venture by yourself, or if you do have partners, or if you're going to have, people know the phrase silent partners and just have somebody there for finances, you're going to apply for an SBA loan, whatever. If you go and speak to an attorney first, then you know what structure is going to best fit your business plan, your business goals. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of differences between an LLC. People have heard that mentioned before.
Right.
That's a limited liability company. That's something in the state of Ohio we recognize. People have heard partnerships, corporations, and even there's professional associations for doctors, lawyers, dentists that they can incorporate and be, and file with the Secretary of State. And I think if you're going to go through drafting a business plan, meeting with the person, depending on what service or product or sale, what is your vision? Is this a business that you want to grow? Is there a potential to grow into $1 million business? Is that what your vision is? Or is this something you want to do part-time?
Right.
Is this something that you just want to do to supplement your income? And all those factors come into play when you decide what type of business entity you want to be in.
So let's say, for example, that we start out as an LLC. Now, I'm familiar with that because that's what I have. I have a limited liability company. I'm a service provider. I don't necessarily have product per se, at least right now. I may, in the future, have a product. But so as a service provider in an LLC, let's say that my business grew and I decided I was going to have lots of employees. Is it possible that my needs might change and I might need to restructure the company? And how hard is that? The possibility is there that you could potentially have to restructure. But there's multi-million, huge corporations, or I shouldn't say corporations, but huge companies that have chose to be LLCs versus corporations. And so does that provide you with a definite veil of protection, the LLC?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of times we do advise people to create the LLC. A corporation, you usually have to issue stocks. You have to have a board. There's a lot of technical provisions, without getting into too many details, with a corporation, including keeping a corporate notebook. You have to have annual minutes. And there's a lot of things to distinguish somebody as a corporation, besides just putting an INC dot or a corp after the name. There's a lot of support that has to prove that that's a corporation. Where an LLC, I don't want to say there's less paperwork, but an LLC gives you a little more flexibility. And I believe that's probably why it was created. However, a lot of people will say they're an LLC and use that as an LLC, file with the Secretary of State with the LLC, but they don't have the supporting documents, meaning an operating agreement.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
So what is an operating agreement?
An operating agreement is an outline of how the business is going to be ran. If you have more than one member or even a partner, it's going to say who plays what role, what percent, what voting rights. Again, there's some similarities in corporations because in a corporation, they'll talk about what shareholders can or cannot do and so on.
Okay.
So an LLC, again, is usually a little simpler. But if you don't have an operating agreement to kind of outline how the business is to be ran procedurally, the LLC paperwork from the Secretary of State is simply that piece of paper. You need to show the LLC is a separate business as a separate entity.
And so what if you're a solopreneur like me who is an LLC? What kind of operating agreement? I do everything. So do I still need an operating agreement?
I would say yes.
Okay.
And also with the LLC, you're going to be keeping things separate, even though you are the LLC at this point.
Right.
You want to show that the LLC is a separate entity for any kind of tax purposes or just so that you are personally shielded. That's the reason you created it. Because even though you are the business in a sense, the LLC is the business. So we need to make sure that that LLC is also insulated.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around.
Absolutely.
You know, because it's like, so what does that really mean, keeping me isolated?
Right.
So what does that mean? So, you know, I mean, I think I have a pretty good idea of what it means, but for our listeners, let's talk a little bit more about that, because the likelihood that someone's going to start a company as a lifestyle business, you know, where they're doing it to keep their, you know, the style of life that they've come accustomed to, that's what we call lifestyle businesses. Or for another example might be like a mom and pop shop.
Sure.
You know, a lot of times they're set up as LLCs.
Right.
And so how does that protect you? I mean, what does that mean to put that veil between you and your personal stuff?
Right. And again, I'm trying to answer related to your personal business because, and again, that's the reason you would want to meet with an attorney and an accountant. Every situation could be a little different.
Right.
You may need different agreements. You may need agreements that say you're an employee of the
LLC itself,
the corporate, you know, different corporations, whatever business entity. So there's a lot of different things.
A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Okay.
And so each thing is so specific that it's kind of hard to answer in general. But the reason you want to keep them separate is because if you loan money, for example, to your business to get started, if that's your personal money and the business takes a loss, obviously you'd want to talk to your accountant again, but there could be a potential tax benefit for you. Or if your business starts to make money, how do you pay yourself back?
Right.
So you want to keep those things separate. The other reason you want to keep them separate is not just for tax purposes, but also any kind of liability issues, whether it comes to a breach of contract. You know, there's various business lawsuits that could potentially happen if you were dealing with vendors or when you grow any kind of employee actions or just any other actions. If you have personal assets such as a home, you know, your own accounts, your own bank accounts, your business venture, you want to keep separate. And there are cases, of course, you know, that people will try to, and they call it pierce a corporate veil.
Right.
And
I've heard that term before.
So if a business says they don't have any money, you know, potentially they'll try to pierce the corporate veil, which means they'll go through the business and then try to attack and take assets, you know, from somebody personally. So that's why each situation's a little different.
Right.
So I don't mean to not answer your question, but
It's
I'm trying
just
to.
hard.
It's very hard. So I'm trying to stay very vague.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So the best thing for someone to do then is to sit down with the attorney and say, this is what my vision is. This is what I want to do. I'm either going to be service or product oriented, or maybe a mixture of both. And maybe having an idea of what the end game looks like. I mean, we talked a little bit about that before we went back on the air, and it was, you know, do you have an end goal in mind? So we all know that we're not going to live forever as much as we want to, but, and we're not always going to have a business. So at some point in time, it's like, what do you do with the business? What is your vision today of what that end game is?
Right.
So does knowing that or having some sort of idea about that help you make those decisions about what kind of business structure to start with?
Absolutely. The other thing is that when you're opening a business, not only do you want to think about, as you mentioned before, as you grow, what your end result is, or, you know, what the goal is, but you also want to think of, and the attorney will be able to go through different scenarios based on the individual details. But what if this happens? Then what do you want to see happen with your business? Or what if this happens? So you want to kind of have, those can be written into the operating agreement, or again, those are considerations for the business entity. So there's a lot of detail that needs to come into that conversation with the attorney the first time you meet.
So it's really not all that simple.
No.
It's really not all that simple.
Not at all.
So, so let's say that somebody has been in business for a while.
Okay.
And maybe they filed the papers themselves.
Okay.
And maybe they're questioning whether or not they did it right.
Okay.
What would you suggest for that person? I get that question a lot, and I tell them, you really need to go see a good attorney. And, of course, it's like, well, I don't know any good attorneys. So
you do now.
Well, now we do, right? And so Pam Curd, she can be contacted.
Exactly.
No. So can they take a step backwards and say, okay, I need to reevaluate this and do a little cleanup? How hard is that?
Absolutely. Because let's say you did just simply download the forms off the internet,
right? Which everybody does,
and everybody does.
Go through LegalZoom or whatever,
right? The problem with filing that on your own, do you have the supporting documentation? Is that the form that you really were supposed to fill out? Mm-hmm. So just because you fill out the form and they process the $125 filing fee, and you get the charter back, doesn't necessarily mean you're an LLC as far as a legal standpoint.
Gotcha.
The Secretary of State, yes, that's a legal LLC. Let me rephrase that. However, if someone challenged your legal status, as in someone tried to sue you, would you be protected?
Okay. And
do you have that supporting documentation other than just that piece of paper from the Secretary of State?
Okay. So having that piece of paper from the state and a liability policy, insurance policy, isn't necessarily going to cut the mustard there, is it?
Not always.
Not always. Okay. And so not having the proper operating agreements in place, whether you're a solopreneur, a partnership, whatever it is, could ultimately nullify any coverage that your insurance is supposedly covering you for.
Exactly.
Holy macaroni. That's a lot of moving parts.
So even with the insurance policy, what did you sign up? What kind of liability?
Right.
You know, a lot of business have business policies so that if somebody falls at their doorstep and the landlord doesn't cover it, they're covered. But do you have a policy that covers if something else goes wrong?
Right.
So again, try not to sign anything until you make sure all the parts fit for your specific venture.
So really the best move then from what we're talking about is to start putting all of those pieces into place, like I talk at the Business Launcher Workshop in one of my slides in the free workshop is start building that network structure of the attorney, the CPA, the insurance man, the banker, and your mentor, right? I mean, you got to have those 5 pieces in place in order for you to really sort of have a full foundation for getting your business off in the right frame.
Absolutely.
So that you can build on top of that. So probably what's going through most people's minds is yeah, but this is going to cost a lot of money. And so I know that we can't talk specifics because everybody charges different amounts and everything. But if someone was to budget a few $1,000s, is that enough for them to get at least the foundational structure put into place for starting a business if it's not an overly complicated business structure?
Absolutely. I think that's very fair. And each case is different. Most people nowadays would also look at potentially securing domain names, licensing, trademarks, and there's different ways to do that also. I personally don't do trademarks, but we do have somebody in the office that handles that. And so if you go and you Google whatever the name of your business and it doesn't come up, so you go by the domain name, does that mean you can still use that for your business? I mean, there's a lot of legalities to that. So one of the aspects that we talk about in initial business startup is, unfortunately or fortunately nowadays, we have to consider all the social media on the web because there's so many things involved in that. And depending on, again, what's your vision? Do you want to just be in this area? Do you want to just be in the United States? Do you want to be international? Then you're going to have to figure out what level of licensing, I can't say the word.
Licensure?
That's it. And trademark or, and even various
copyright
ideas and patents. Exactly. How are you communicating your ideas and to what level? can also have some legal ramifications.
So a friend of mine just got a nasty gram from a company in California saying that she was stepping on their name. And I thought it was a little weird about how they did it, but, so it does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen.
In certain instances, and not to scare anyone, but there can be some trademark issues. Maybe we can talk about that. Maybe someone will ask a question about that.
Great. So I'm getting the music again that we have to take another break. I can't believe time is flying by. So when we come back, we're going to wrap it up with one more question from Pam, and we'll do the mailbag, and we'll see you when we come back. Okay, so here we are back with Pamela Kurt of Kurt Law Offices. And when we left, we were talking about trademark and what happens if you accidentally infringe. And during the break, we were talking a little bit about a term called trademark trolls. And so I wanted to finish this conversation before we close out the show because I don't want to freak anybody out. So, Pam, let's talk a little bit more about that trademark troll. Tell me what happens in that situation.
Well, again, we don't want to freak anybody out. We don't want to scare anyone. But there are people out there that actually search the web and all the different social medias to make sure that their name usage isn't being used. So even if they don't have a business, they might go and trademark the name, and then they go and look for people who potentially are using their name without their permission.
That's kind of like a domain squatter.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and again, there's ways to protect it. However, you're going to market your business. Again, it'll be part of the initial conversation so we can make sure that those names are available. And there's multiple means to market, as we all know. And there's ways to maybe differentiate your name just enough so that you wouldn't be infringing anyone's trademark. But again, there are trademark trolls out there, and there are people out there just to see if somebody's using their name.
Okay, so it's not just enough then to go to the state's website and type in the name that you want to use or search Google to see if anybody else is using it.
Not
You
nowadays.
really need to do a little bit more homework, and they can contact your office or their attorney's office, and they can do a full search for
Absolutely.
it. Okay. So
Absolutely.
there are other tools that are available that maybe we're not privy to.
Yes.
So okay, good. All right. Well, that's a good a good lesson to be learned there. So we may hear more about that further down the line as the days go on. So. Okay, so the next part of the show is really kind of a fun part of the show, and I call it the mail grab bag. And I just want to pull out a couple of quick questions, and Pam, you can help me answer them.
Sure, thank you.
And so the first one is I want to start a business now, and I want to run it through my personal checking account. Is that okay?
Absolutely not. I'm sure your accountant would say that as well as myself. And hopefully, after you listen to the brief legalese and so on that we've just discussed, you realize that if you did that, they would clearly be personing any kind of corporate veil, and you're opening yourself up liable for anything that could potentially happen.
Okay. So you're sort of opening the can of worms yourself there.
Absolutely. I would strongly recommend that you would not do that.
Okay.
It is worth the wait to get the documents from the Secretary of State, potentially, if necessary, the EIN number from the IRS to open the appropriate checking account. Right. So I know it's exciting and it's a great venture and you want to get started, but some things are worth the wait to put in the proper order.
Okay, great. And then the other question that we had is that I have a business partner and we've been in business for a while. However, we are starting to drift apart. Their values are not the same as mine anymore. What do you think I should do?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, as part of the initial conversation, when we do the drafting for the operating agreement or articles of incorporation or whatever particular business entity, we have to talk about what if it fails. There is extra exit strategy plans, and most companies don't have those at all. But that is actually, how do you dissolve the company? What if this happens? And you have to plan to fail, because I shouldn't say you have to plan to fail. It's you should
have an exit plan.
Exactly. You should
in
think
the event
about
that things turn sour.
What's going to happen legally. What is the decision, the two of you? Think of it as when you join partners, that think of it almost as a marriage.
Right.
Because in any business marriage, you should probably have a prenup. And obviously those terms are not in a legal sense. So I think that you need to have an exit strategy. And if the visions are changing, discuss how, if you can incorporate those changes into your current plan, go back and amend those, or if it is time to separate ways. And either way, that conversation probably needs to be with an attorney to make sure that both of you are protected as you go through the changes.
Okay, that's good advice. That's really good advice. Okay, so the next section of the show is where we talk a little bit about some of the events that are going on around town. I picked up there's two that I want to talk about, and this is just a brief announcement, but I'll give you some information on where you can find more information on it. One is the Business Launcher Workshop. That starts on October 2nd. It is at the Courtyard Marriott Hotel, runs for 5 weeks, and it is given by myself and Lori Gorell, a business coach, and it is for women only who are ready to make that vision in their head real. And that runs for 5 weeks. And you will walk out with a really clear-cut plan of action for getting your business off the ground. We've had some that have walked out and launched businesses within 3 months. Some are still working on them. So it's go at your own pace, but have a definite plan. The other is a program that's going on at the Chesterland Innovation Center. Chesterland Innovation Center gives life to small business ideas, one inspiration at a time. And they are offering a business boost program. What they do is they help you sort of figure out what that vision is and test it against some revenue streams and make sure that it's a viable business before you get to the planning stage. So that would even be like pre-business plan stage. So this is just another tool that you can use. For more information, you'll want to call Tim Lieberger at 440-729-2902, or you can send an email to dreamdoor@att.net. Again, that phone number is 440-729-2902. That's for the Chesterland Innovation Center. If you're interested in the Business Launcher Workshop for women, contact info@businesslauncherworkshop.com. And that's probably pretty close to all the time we have left in the show today. It went really fast. So Pam, we have to wrap up, unfortunately, but give me the information, share it with our listeners on how they would contact you if they wanted to make an appointment to come see you.
Okay. Well, I hope they do. And I would love for our law office to help you make your vision come true and to give you the proper legal advice to do that. We are located in Wickliffe, Ohio, and looking to expand soon, as I had shared with Susan before. And our phone number is 440-516-1010. And you could either reach us that way or through the website at kurtlawoffice.com. And again, the phone number is 440-516-1010. And if you're looking to email me personally, my first initial P, the last name Kurt, K-U-R-T, at kurtlawoffice.com.
Great. So yes, definitely get in touch with Pam. Be sure to join us next week as we talk about money. Our guest is going to be Jim Lodato, owner of Lodato & Company, CPA. That's where they lead people, manage things, and count money. So remember that this show is for you, the person who is interested in launching a new business. And we want to be sure to address your questions and comments. So please send them to help at makemyvisionreal.biz. That's help.makemyvisionreal.biz. Thanks for joining us tonight. I wish you good luck and good business. Have a great evening.
You've been listening to Make My Vision Real, a local resource for starting and growing your small business. Visit makemyvisionreal.biz for more information on connections to local resources. Send your questions for next week's show to help@makemyvisionreal.biz. Today's program was brought to you by Spear Consulting Services, helping small businesses thrive through social media, websites, and creative marketing. Learn more at spearconsultingservices.com. The show's founder and host, Susan Swartzwelder, is a small business specialist. Tune in every Sunday from 6 to 7 p.m. as Susan and her guests share ideas and resources to help you start and grow the successful business of your dreams.